If you make any further inquiries, or if you say a single word to anyone about what you have seen, there will be the most dire consequences for you and your family.
You shut up and you sit down. Maintenant, tu la fermes ta grande gueule, t'as compris? Hein?
Man, what the hell wrong with you? I don't play that shit, man. You better check my police record. You don't know who you messing with. Huh? You messing with me? I killed the son.
A little kid might come along and think we were candy. That would be awful because we're medicine. He might even eat us. No, 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 no. This is serious. Serious. We could make you delirious. Delirious. Use it as a healthy fear of us. Fear of us. Too much of us is dangerous. No, no.
Like this before. Come on, get me on the floor. DJ, what you waiting for?
Okay, so now we look at different types of creation myths. There are many different types and flavors, and I'm basing this discussion on the book Creation Myths of the World by David Leeming, who categorizes creation myths in a couple different ways, with the added caveat that they're not mutually exclusive, and in a given creation myth you might have elements from different, but from the different types, but you can it helps to think about the creation myths in these kind of different categories. So the first category is ex nihilo, which just means creation out of nothing, right? So that's kind of the most direct form of creation, where it's like there's a void, there's an omnipotent creator existing alone in pre-creation void or emptiness. And so there's this idea where it's like there isn't any material, there's a being, there isn't any material to create from, but by will, by word, or by thought alone is enough to manifest something from nothing, right? So this is the something from nothing type of creation, or rather mediated by a creator's power, right? So it's still creation out of nothing in the sense that the creator isn't taking some material that was existing beforehand and restructuring it to then create something. It's like, oh no, now this is the same thing, but I've just kind of reformatted it in some way. It's the creator is actually manifesting this material from nothing or from their own divine will, but that's not really thought of as the material itself, right? So creates by divine will, word, thought, or breath even, so they can breathe something into existence. You can think of the kind of standard, let there be light, right? So it's like just by uttering those words, light then is created. So just by will, thought, word, or breath, something manifests, right? And so I liken this to kind of a rabbit out of the void represented as the rabbit out of the hat, right? So there's the rabbit existing only after, the magician says, veni vidi vici, or abracadabra, or, whatever word you want to utter as the magical thing to say. Then what wasn't there is now there, right? So it's not that the rabbit, again, is not formed from some previous material. It's there is a true void, and out of that void comes something by will or by some sort of divine act. And one good example, actually, in a non-SnyderVerse movie is Beau is Afraid, actually. So there's actually a scene, if you watch that movie, there's a scene where there's like this black hole, and there's like a rainbow around the black hole, but the black hole itself kind of, to me, represents a void, right? So that represents the emptiness, or the, pre-creation void, right? And a person reaches in there and pulls out a gun. So it's like, that's the magic. That's like the rabbit out of the hat. It's like, where did that gun come from? It came from the void, right? So that's an instance of creation ex nihilo, in the sense that it didn't require any material. It's just like, here's a void. You can pull out whatever the hell you want to pull out, right? Just by will alone. And that's obviously, it's like in the literal story, you might say, oh, the gun was in there and they just pulled it out. There's nothing special about that. But you got to think in terms of the symbolic and the mythological. When you look at darkness, you're looking at a void, and then it's like you reach in and you pull something out. You've pulled something out of the void. You've created something ex nihilo by will alone, and then you have something. Okay, so that is just kind of one example. First creation type we look at, ex nihilo. So the first kind of general thing I see as ex nihilo is, when the movie begins, right? So when the movie begins, we have this shot here, only on this channel, by the way, will you see, a person analyze this type of shot. Just a black rectangle. Very important shot. As it represents, actually, I mean, you can kind of see it with this background of the universe. It's like there's stars, and then there's like a blackness there. There's a void. There's a void, like a true void, is, nicely represented as just pure blackness. You could also have, another type of pure void, maybe as pure whiteness, right? White, you can imagine also, you get a sense of like, there's like nothing there, it's emptiness. And then to me, whenever the movie like truly begins, like within the story and within like the world of what's happening, the director is basically saying, let there be light when that first shot appears of, now we're within the world, now we're within the story. And so here's in Man of Steel, if you couldn't tell, this black rectangles from Man of Steel, the first image, right? That kind of feels like let there be light, right? That feels like a moment, like a really profound moment. Actually, it's like we're no longer in the title sequence or like the signs and all of these things. It's like, we're starting the story, right? That's a really important moment, naturally. And so to me, I interpret that as like the director is kind of playing the creator here, who is saying, let there be light, let the movie begin, right? And again, visually shown as from a place of dark blackness representing void to, okay, light is here now. So now there's like stuff happening. You should be able to guess this black void, because it's not a true, complete and utter black void. It is, there's a leaf there. So that tells you this is from BVS. Again, a kind of void. Yeah, there's bubblings of things taking place, bubbling of potential. But, there is a let there be light moment, right? So it's still a transition from darkness to light, right? So light, again, let there be light occurs. And that's a really important shot. That's a really important time, because now we're actually within the story. And now this black void, a really important shot. You should be able to tell based on the aspect ratio. At the very least, the aspect ratio of this void You can't miss it. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? So, important shot, creation. Let there be light. Let there be lightning, right? So this is like the image. This is an image of creation out of the void, and then suddenly lightning, suddenly light, suddenly image, suddenly structure, right? And then for this, it goes back to darkness or obscurity, and then something else is revealed, right? So again, at each moment, it's like we're slowly unfolding what is occurring, and you're slowly peeling back the layers to what is actually there. And so each such moment is a point of creation. Here in this case, ex nihilo is what I'm equating now with a let there be light moment, because that kind of feels very ex nihilo, to just utter something and then it appears, or in this case, it just kind of appears, right? Just by the necessity of time, or the director deciding, hey, through his divine will, through their divine will, the movie begins now. Now you're in the story, right? We have another example that I would categorize as ex nihilo, simply because Jor-El comes out of the council, and he sees all this destruction and chaos over here, and he calls for Haraka. So he calls out. So calling out is itself, that let there be light moment, abracadabra, right? It's an utterance, a vocalization that gives rise to the thing, right? So in this case, Haraka is the rabbit, and the utterance is like saying abracadabra, but here he's saying Haraka. So through that kind of divine utterance or divine will of this, he's very, very much kind of representing a godlike figure, right? The father of the son, who is Kal-El, who utters the words, and then suddenly, in this case, Haraka appears from thin air. So Haraka isn't being created from some pre-existing material. He just appears based on the utterance. So that's ex nihilo. We have another example of ex nihilo. If you see Lois Lane in BVS with Lex Luthor, he pushes her off, and she falls, she screams. So her utterance, her vocalization is a screaming. It's like a yelling. And through that yelling is like abracadabra, Haraka, but in this case, the magical phrase is ah. And that through that simple yell appears light, appears the rabbit, right? So we go from void to light, creation, light, rabbit, right? All of these things, right? Lex refers to Superman as a wabbit. Okay, so in this case, the rabbit out of the hat is Superman. Like suddenly he appears. Like where did he come from? Oh, suddenly, of course he's there, right? He's got to save Lois. But what I'm saying is that we're going through a particular process of creation through a divine utterance, a divine yell, a divine call that creates this kind of mythical superhero emerging from a void. And we see that kind of also, with this kind of notion of light appearing as he appears as well. So that's doubly like, oh wow, there's like something really creative happening here. And so too, the created thing is her foundation, right? So it's like when you're sinking or falling or something, in this case, the created vessel is the foundation upon which she, takes a gentle glide down to the ground. And so there's another element to that. The created thing is actually serving as a foundation or an earth or because a lot of the creation myths, of course, have at some point, a lot of the, cultures have at some point in the creation myth, creation of Earth itself, right? So in this, Earth is a foundation. Earth is a place that you can actually build things on top of, and you're not falling into a sea or anything like that. You are being supported, and so this is when even later it's like Superman says, "You are my world." There is this notion that other people can serve as the rock or foundation. By saying, "You are my world," which Superman later says, and we see this visual motif of like him actually being below her, so he is her world as well. He is her foundation in this moment, especially, right? And then from a more abstract level, right? They love each other, and so that's kind of a supportive, a relationship of love is a supportive relationship, and so to support is to be a foundation, right? So all of these things are true, but in this case, I want to highlight ex nihilo in the sense of utterance, and then poof, rabbit appears, Superman appears. And so, you kind of get that sense when you watch this scene. It's like, oh, where did he come from? Same thing with Haraka. It's like, oh, what? How did this happen? Right? In this case, in both cases, there's a divine utterance, a call, a yell, something like that, sparks. If she didn't yell, he wouldn't be able to hear. He wouldn't be able to come, right? So her yell, belting that out from within, is a powerful, magical, mystical, amazing, transcendent thing. There you go. And so another ex nihilo, I would say, is, when Cyborg creates from his kind of third eye, right? So he kind of forms an image. I would call this ex nihilo as well, because it's like this is kind of forming from nothing. It's formed from a divine will, just kind of like a thought is generating this figure, this kind of miniature figure of Superman. And so Superman represents the created thing, the created flower, the created, object, right? So that, to me, also kind of nicely sits in the ex nihilo category. We also have world parents. This is an important one. This is definitely an important one. There's two types, according to creation myths of the world. The first type is there's two parents that are in a cramped union, thus offering no space for creation, so must separate. So in order to create, they have to separate first to allow for the space of creation to take place. And so there's one particular case, story in Maori mythology, where you have two beings, Mother Papa and Father Rangi, here pictured. Trapped between the bodies of their parents, the deities had little space to move around and no light to see. Wary of this situation, the offspring discussed how they could escape the confines of their existence. So they're confined because the parents are so joined together. The god of the forests placed his head on his mother Papa, raised his feet in the air, and pushed upward against his father Rangi. Using all his might, Tane finally separated Rangi and Papa, pushing Rangi up into the sky and pressing Papa to the earth. With Rangi and Papa separated, the space between them became flooded with light. So as there be light, but it's through this act of separation that light is actually allowed to flood through. The various deities, humans, and other offspring who had been trapped there, scattered into the world, or who have been trapped there are now scattered into the world. Heartbroken at being separated from his beloved Papa, Rangi cried, right? His tears rained down upon the earth from the sky, causing great flooding. Okay, so it's like through this separation, first of all, the separation is painful, but necessary in order for creation and light and water and all of these things to be able to flourish in this place, okay? So that's one example where there are two parents and they must separate in order for creation to take place. There's also the world parent, which is a single parent who creates through sacrificial dismemberment of their own body. So their body actually becomes the creation material. They sacrifice themselves by dismemberment. So it's like, the hands become this, the head becomes that. And so one example is when the gods of Vedic India sacrificed the primal man, Purusha, his broken body became the social castes, as well as the animals, plants, rituals, and the sacred Vedas themselves. From Purusha's mind came the moon, from his eye the sun, from his breath the wind, from his head the sky, from his feet the earth, from his navel the atmosphere. Okay, so you have a single parent that can be dismembered in some way to then create the world, or you can have this other world parent motif with two parents joined together, and in their union, that's kind of a negative thing in this sense, because it's like it doesn't allow for creation, and therefore they must be separated for the world to be created. So if you can imagine, if they ever join back together, the world will, be in cataclysmic turmoil, will descend into chaos again. And so there's in the first version of world parents, it's kind of like the egg as well. The egg represents this kind of state of being trapped and confined, and then once that is broken, once the egg cracks, once these parents separate, it allows for the phoenix to rise. It allows for the light to flood in, right? So there's this idea from union, and that kind of goes with the monad, right? So the monad, the deity that is singular, out of which things come from, there's no creation in that, right? So there has to be this cracking in order for any drama to take place at all, right? So if you can be drama free, if you go back into this monadic state where it's like nothing is actually occurring, you need that split. You need that separation in order to experience anything at all, frankly, right? And to experience anything being created. And so all of these have different ways of viewing these sort of same elements, philosophical elements of creation, just kind of expressed in different ways, whether it be world parents, or the cosmic egg, or from chaos, and all of these things. There really are just different aspects of the same type of creation. The world parents type of creation is when the parents are so close that they don't allow for new creation to take place. But here in this case, we have the separation occurring, like let's say, they're very close here, right? They're very close here. Here he's just looking at the baby, but he's still close to Laura. And so, but that, he realizes, he's like, oh, when we get to this part here, he realizes, oh, actually, I gotta help actually deliver the baby. I can't be, like, the baby can't be delivered properly if I just stay with you, and I want to stay with you. And so it's like the world parents are like, kind of not wanting to separate. That's the vibe you get when you see this sequence. It's like they want us. He wants to support her directly. He wants to hold her directly, and then he looks and he's like, "Oh, I gotta go." And then she even kind of like reaches out for him as he leaves. So this is like the world parents actually separating, and then in that act of separation, therefore, allows for new birth and new creation to take place. Good things take place, right? When the world parents can learn to separate themselves, right? To make way for new creation. And in this case, very holy creation of the newborn Kal-El. All right, so in Batman v Superman, we have in the very beginning, Bruce running off and his parents dying and all of that, right? That's world parents separation. The child who is living is also undergoing a pain through that suffering, but that pain is precisely what creates who he is now. So it's like, remember, the Axis Mundi isn't just about, oh, it's nice and sweet and easy. Sometimes the birth is an ugly process. Often the birth is an ugly process. Actually, it's like something's got to be sacrificed in general if you're going to transition, right? So it's like the world parents being separated in this case, right? First, it's a very kind of tight situation they're in. He's very close, and Batman, arguably wouldn't have ever existed had this, setup remained, where he's, his parents are just alive and okay. Would Batman exist at all? That may be a good question. And so in this case, his parents dying, very tragic. He would certainly prefer them to be there, but nevertheless, it's like the Axis Mundi. It's like, okay, that's happened. Now something else is going to be created from it. Like, it's going to happen, right? So, but this is the world parents in the sense that they have to separate in order for Batman to exist at all. So the separation of the world parents, the leaving him leaves him free to then create and define his reality. Here we also have the world parents separation in Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? But this is more relating to something that's holding him back psychologically. Like, he needs to kind of pass this so that he can be free to be and live again, right? And so to live, for Kal-El to live, parents had to be separated. For Batman to be created, and thus for Batman to live effectively, the parents were a root cause of that. The death and the separation, the painful and tragic death and separation, were the root cause of the creation of Batman. So too here, but in a slightly different kind of permutation of things, it's like his parents are already dead. This is an illusion, right, by the mother boxes, and they're still trying to tempt him into remaining fixed, being tethered to the loss of his parents, like psychologically. It's like you can be tethered to that and not allow yourself to grow, or you can sort of accept what is true and what is kind of beyond, have a greater cosmic understanding of things, to see that you can make, first of all, you can make new family, and there's his new family is in the Justice League, and remember, he breaks the veil of that illusion and effectively separates the world parents within his own psyche. So this whole scene is taking place in his mind, basically, right? So this is all in his mind, created by the mother box. But in his mind, he has to get rid of any last remnants of being unhealthily or inharmoniously tethered to the memory of his parents, right? You can remember your parents, but are you doing so in a way that holds you down from continued growth, continued life, right? And so this is a world parents separation again, but with the slight permutation is that first they're already gone. The real parents are already dead, but it's their death that is actually is still kind of a thing throughout the story that gets in the way of like him being able to live again and be happy, right? And feel, a sense of harmony with the universe. And so this represents that letting go, right? So in order for Cyborg to live again, he has to make the willful choice to sacrifice this, this illusory attachment or illusory figures of his parents. So again, this is the world parents motif, where the parents have to step aside so that the child can be free to create. There's also the single world parent, where the single world parent, remember, is typically where the god or deity sacrifices themselves, and their body parts typically and the pieces of themselves become the world. And so the idea here is that Superman is destroyed. He is destroyed so that the people around him can have an opportunity to take a stand on their own, right? So there's sort of Superman's existence is effectively, not inherently, but effectively a sin, and Lex Luthor is right, insofar as people use his existence to remain idolatrous, or to remain idle in their own heroic pursuits. Okay, so Superman kind of serves as that world parent that's even like constricting or confining or cramping, not allowing the space for other people to take a stand, right? Because and it's by their own, it's not by anything he's doing, it's by their misunderstanding of Superman. So by their misunderstanding of Superman, they are all kind of tethered to either hating him or worshiping him. He doesn't want either of those things, and he wants us to take a stand, right? And so he needs to die. In that death allows for this thing to occur. If you seek his monument, look around you. So the people have to kind of take a stand. The people step up. But if they're constantly thinking, oh, Superman will take care of it, or they get so distracted with hating Superman or whatever it is, all of that's actually constricting, cramping the ability for the people to, step into their own heroic role. Okay, so he is really like the world parent, and it's kind of like I kind of see this as like his dead body being like, dispersed throughout the Yeah, don't ask me why. I just kind of see it that way. I mean, it looks like a body, right? Maybe a few more arms and legs and antenna than Superman has, but looks like some sort of thing. But that essence of Superman is somehow being dispersed. Especially, by the way, maybe a better analogy is the candles, right? Remember, the candles is the spiritual flame of us taking a stand, right? Reigniting the spiritual strength within us is what those candles represent to me. The dark out in the dark among the stars, right? So each of us can be those stars to shine bright in such a way as to take up the mantle of that heroic role. And so there's also the Earth Diver, which is another very important one. Very, very important one. The idea is, well, first of all, it's mostly Central Asian, Indian, and Native North American. It stresses creation of Earth as opposed to the larger cosmos. So this is like, how is the Earth itself created? Earth covered in primal waters initially, right? And that's what they're diving into. A diver, usually an animal, dives deep in the water and comes back with earth, which is used to create the world. And there tends to be also an aspect of meditation on an inherent duality with the twin motif. And so in one particular story, there is, I think it's the Iroquois Indians, there's a sky woman who falls from the sky, and the animals have to help her and kind of create a foundation for her. So first, there's a turtle that she is allowed to stand on, but there needs to be more land, right? So all the animals kind of descend looking for land. So the animals are the earth divers descending into the waters to come back with earth, to come back with a foundation, to come back with something substantial. And when they bring that back up, that material is used, in this particular case, put on the back of the turtle and is allowed to grow into the Earth, Turtle Island, North America, as we know it. And so there's this idea that this divine being initiates this process and need for this foundation. Okay, in this case, it's a woman who fell and descended from the sky above. Okay, so remember, this isn't about creation of everything. This is specifically about the earth and how earth itself was created. There's already this kind of sky world where these beings lived in initially. So this dive is like the hero dive into the belly of the whale, into the jaws of the belly of the whale that Joseph Campbell talks about, where the hero dive is about descending into the belly of the whale, into the inner temple, and that is a descent into the underworld to retrieve something that has been lost. Okay, and so this has similar echoings of the same type of creation structure as the hero myth. The hero myth itself is a creation myth, which is about restructuring the order of the world. So, the standard thing in the hero's journey is that the world starts out some way, the hero goes and does some initiatory journey, learns something and brings it back to the world to change the world for the better, right? And that's the idea is, the hero diver and the earth diver are actually connected. And there are a variety of earth diver myths, especially throughout the SnyderVerse. So, here's Jor-El diving into the water, diving into the sea. Remember, the earth diver is diving into the sea to obtain, right? So we're in the water, to obtain something really important, to obtain something that will serve as the foundation for a new world, right? So if you know Man of Steel, this is precisely that. Zod can't create another Krypton without also the Codex, right? So the Codex is the foundation of the Kryptonian culture, the people, and all of that. And so this artifact is representing that. In the Earth Diver myth, the animals dive into the water to find Earth, to create a new world. similar thing, except now this is for the people, so that the people can be generated. And so this serves as the foundation for the very culture and society that is Krypton. Earth diver myth, you dive down basically for a very valuable thing that sets the foundation for a lot of other things to take place. This is that, okay? Similarly, if you remember, like his hands were out, here his hands are out again. It really, this, when he dives again, it's not in the sea necessarily, but it is looking like a dark kind of abyss of like what is even down there. There's barely a foundation of anything. It's more earthy, I would say, but it is also, I mean, you do see some pools of water, but in any case, I kind of feel like it was more of like a faith jump, where it's like, hey, I got to go and hope for, maybe I'll land in some water, maybe, something's going to happen, something's going to protect me. And then, of course, right, the new foundation, Haraka, comes. So it's like, in this case, it's his faith. It's his faith. So in both cases, he has his arms spread out. That's the image of the cross. That's an act of faith. When you take that leap of faith, that in and of itself, and this is a profound thing, actually. Like, so please listen. It's like the faith-based act is a creative force. Right. I don't know if you understand how big that is. I don't know if you understand how big, but having a humble kind of and true motive married with faith, that's a powerful creative act, and that's what's happening here, and that's how Haraka actually comes, right? So Earth Diver myth, as far as I interpret, is also an act of faith, because you got to hold your breath, you got to go down deep potentially, you don't know what's gonna right. So there's a leap of faith in the idea of what you'll find. You might not find anything, you might crash, you might who knows what's going to happen, right? So it takes faith. So he looks up at the ships, he looks down and he's like, oh wow, I'm stuck between these two options. I guess here's my choice. I'm jumping. So that's a faith act, right? When they go through that cross, and but the point is, what's the foundation here? What's the earth? What's the new? It's Haraka. Haraka is reformed, appears in that humble, righteous, and true faith, leap of faith. Okay. So, but here's the thing. It's like, no, that actually is a powerful means of creation. That's like supernatural, almost like means of creation, to like look to kind of look at your surroundings and then take that leap. Man, it's if you can nail that, I feel like you can do anything. I kind of feel like you can do anything. So in Batman v Superman, there's another, of course, Earth Diver. So this one is diving into the sea. Again, they're looking for Earth. They're looking for the thing that serves as the foundation, some elixir, some boon, some object. In this case, an earthy rock that will serve as a foundation for other occurrences in the story. And so this truly is that. This truly is Earth Diver myth. And so even just this process of going down very quickly, finding something valuable and coming back up with it, this is Earth Diver. This is Earth Diver myth. Similar thing later in the story, right? So it's like in BVS at the end, Superman is fighting Doomsday, and he realizes to take a step back from that and focus his effort on that alone, and he does so in an Earth dive kind of fashion, right? So he dives, and the boon in this case is not kryptonite, it's Lois. So she, remember, he says, "You are my world." Okay, so he's bringing her up. She is his foundation. She is his world, right? So all of this is related. So when he goes into the water, that's reminiscent of the Earth Diver motif, where one goes to find Earth to create a new land, something that you can. It's a foundation, right? Something you can stand on. She is that person. So it doesn't have to be just an object. It can be a person that is a person's rock or foundation. And again, this is like specifically reference when he says, you are my world, right? I love you. You are my world. This is my world. You are my world, right? So she is that rock for him. In Man of Steel, I would also classify this as an earth diver. It's a faith-based act, remember? So faith is, we're seeing some crazy things take place. We're seeing a building just collapse in front of our eyes, just a few feet away, basically. And Perry White, what does Perry White do? Is he motivated by selfish reasons and self-preservation? But also imagine the strength that it would take for a person to stay back in that moment. So it's like, this is a faith-based act that allows for Superman to ascend. And you're like, how does this allow for Superman to ascend? That's because the way I interpret this is that these situations are interwoven. So even though they're on opposite sides of the earth right now, like literally on opposite sides of the earth, they are deeply connected. So there's this notion that there's an as above, so below concept here. And the as above, so below is the notion that what happens down here has a corresponding thing happening up here. That's what that really means, right? So it's like what happens in our plane affects things in other planes. And that's interesting, right? Because, usually we think, oh, if they're separated, then they're separated. Or a different place on the axis mundi, how is that connected to this? We're so far away, I don't even see them, like what's going on? No, it's like everything that occurs in this plane of reality in a metropolis has a corresponding thing that is spiritually interwoven together. It's like they're not fully separated. Even though there are differences, they're very much interlinked. And so in this case, I interpret this as, in the beginning, they're trying to use force to pry Jenny out of the rubble. And it's not until they let go of that and act in faith that allows for the angel on the other side, on the in the other plane, to do their thing. Okay? So when we don't act in faith, when we don't take that brave step to act in faith, then the beings, the divine beings on the other side, they're going to be struggling. They're going to be like, like they don't have, like Superman is struggling at first. He's like, I don't have enough strength. That's because they're using some of that energy, some of that spiritual energy. It's when faith and selflessness and all of these things, serving other people, being there for other people, right? In a profound act of faith, with buildings collapsing right in front of him, in that faith-based earth dive, allows Superman actually gains energy from that in a spiritual sense. That's how I interpret the scene, is like Superman actually, it's only when Perry White and Lombard let go of trying to force their world and operate in faith and love, that then the spiritual beings, the angels on the other side, can do their thing. They can have, that gives them energy. So it's like, how demons get their energy from fear. So don't give them fear, because that's how they get their energy. Angels, my theory is angels get their energy from faith and love and compassion, like these things. But you have to actually like be willing to show that. When you show that, then they eat that up. They eat it up. Demons want fear. They consume fear. Angels and benevolent beings get their energy, or at least some of their energy. I don't know all the specifics. My theory is they get energy when we act in faith. in like humble faith, in like good faith, not just like careless, so I can just jump and do anything, jump off, do anything I want carelessly, maniacally, but in a humble and true sense when the situation calls for it, and especially if it's like out of love and compassion and you're putting something else ahead of your self-preservation, for instance. That is a powerful, sacred center, a beacon of energy that actually communicates with the other side. They're along this world engine. They're on opposite sides, diametrically opposed. On that diameter is the axis mundi. Remember, you can communicate through the axis mundi. That spiritual energy is being communicated to Superman. Only when Perry White dives down, Superman is able, like, how am I getting this extra energy burst? Like, what? What's happening? That's because these places are spiritually connected. If you're thinking physically, you're going to be like, that has nothing to do with each other. You got to think spiritually, and that spiritual energy is actually being funneled. He's receiving that on the other side. The angel is receiving that on the other side. It's amazing. We're connected. Even though it seems so far away, you can't even see them, right? It's like, but we're connected. This is a beautiful scene. This is like one of my favorite scenes of all time. Remember when this is happening? Remember, the critics already gave it like 50 some odd percent, 55% or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's when I put stake in the critics. I was like, oh man, really? It's not that good? Oh, dang it. It was looking good. I was excited. And I go watch it. I was just blown away, especially in this scene. Never in my life has occurred to me where my jaw literally dropped, like a movie caused my jaw to drop. The first time this scene did that. I was looking around, I was like, is anybody else seeing and experiencing what I'm experiencing right now? Hello, wake up. This is incredible. Like, what are you guys talking about? The critics were ridiculous. as I was like, okay, Rotten Tomatoes, I'm sorry, you guys are going to have to go forever. But it was amazing. This is good stuff, So it's like, it's a very profound moment. But in this case, what I'm saying is the Earth Diver. Perry White is the Earth Diver. He's diving into the Earth for the sacred feminine, just like in BVS, where Superman dives to extract the feminine from being trapped. Yes? And in this case, that is a faith-based act, as we can tell, because the buildings are collapsing in front of you. That takes tremendous faith. That takes tremendous, you know what? My self-preservation really doesn't matter. I'm going to be with you. That's all I can do. I'm not physically able to overcome this, but you know what? I can be with you. We can be together. You are not alone, right? And in the same sense, Perry White and Jenny, they're not alone with respect to Superman. So what they are realizing is that, oh, we're not alone. There's beings actually, in our action, are given energy to then support us. It's a beautiful symbiotic relationship here. That's what you got to understand about the scene. This scene is really powerful, guys. This scene is really powerful. So emergence myths are about, they're mostly Native American as well. Not about creation of the world, but rather creation of a people. So this is about how a people move from one stage to the other into an outer world of understanding and clarity, basically. So again, it's a metaphor for birth, an inner world likened to a womb of the Earth Mother. The people start off deep within the earth and merges into the outer world through stages guided by a feminine figure. Again, example, thinking woman, spider woman, or spider grandmother are, the beings that guide these people. So it's like, oh, thank you, spider grandmother, for guiding us out, and thinking woman and spider woman for guiding us out of this of this cave that we've been trapped in, right? And so one example is the Tewa people coming out into a new world full of blinding light, and were terrified. So they came out and were actually scared because it was like almost too much to be aware of. But Spider-Woman gently got them used to the new world. So it's like, thank you, Spider-Woman. Many thanks. Holes In center floors of sunken kivas, places of ancient social and religious gatherings. So that's this image down here is a kiva. The whole is a sipapu, the symbolic opening from which the people emerged finally from the lower world, from Mother Earth. As they stepped in outside of the sipapu, they changed from lizard-like beings into human forms. So it's like being underneath in this inner world, they weren't even like human yet, right? So it really is like a birth thing, because, you know, you look at a birth and a fetus, they look like, you know, it doesn't even look human yet, right? And it's only through a long process that their human form is actually realized. So you know, really fitting with the birth metaphor. Emergence is about gradual creation of a particular people, literally the people of a particular place marked by the particular emergence site. So this is an axis mundi connecting the various realms, marking. Remember, marking means something is sacred. This is marked by a particular emergence site. And so that marking designates its sacred character coming from the fact that it is an expression of creation, and it is a connecting, a bridging between worlds from the below, the worlds of the inner, to the world of the outer. And so that idea kind of reminds me of the Flammarion engraving. This, you know, guy on the top right who's kind of been in this world and kind of has experienced the world in a particular way and sticks his head out to kind of be reborn, to kind of realize, oh wow, no, there's actually a lot going on outside of this world that most people aren't aware of. Okay, and so that idea where you're starting from some inner space and then moving to an outer space is reminiscent of that. And then on the bottom right, we have Plato's allegory of the cave, again reminiscent of this idea where it's like people are stuck in a cave in a particular worldview. They're not seeing reality in full, and they need to be brought out. And it can be traumatizing, right? If your world is those shadows on the wall, then it can be traumatizing to realize, oh, these puppets are just being placed in our faces by these beings who are keeping us trapped here. And there is a world outside that's like beautiful and rich, like, oh wow, like I want to go there. And so Plato's allegory of the cave, the matrix, emergence, all of these things kind of reflect each other. And if you look at this image, it kind of even looks like the belly of a whale. It looks like they're in a whale. So, you know, whoever drew this, it's like, I feel like they were sort of getting at that too. This idea where it's like when you're in this inner space, whether it be hero diver diving into the belly of the whale, or an earth diver diving into the, you know, chaotic sea below, or from the emergence myth where they start from some, you know, underworld type of state and they're trapped and confined there, they have to go through a process so that they can escape. This is kind of like an escape room, and there's a process, there's a way out of this escape room, and we only need to learn and accept that these shadows aren't even real, right? So you're just getting up, walking out, and being like, you know what? I'm done with this. So in this case, it's not technically within the earth, but it is within somewhere. It's within a belly, right? The scout ship, it's in the belly of the whale. And you kind of start deep within the belly. And then the other thing about the emergence myth is that there's typically a woman figure. But in this case, it's just any figure that guides the person or people out of being in that hidden inner space, so the inner womb. And so we go through all these stages. We go through all these stages of Jor-El explaining things to Clark, right? And by the time we get here, you know, he's guided him out of that inner space in stages, in degrees, right? And then he steps out, so he emerges, right? And this is like emerging from the womb, emerging from within, and kind of stepping out into the light to, you know, show who he really is. And he's kind of reborn in this sense as Superman, or as like one of the stages of Superman's birth, right? There's another type which is kind of maybe more intuitive, from chaos. So there's this primordial chaos out of which things arise. So there's a sea of chaotic amorphous material which contains the potential for creation. So unlike ex nihilo, where there's true void, there's nothing, the sea of potential is stuff, but it just needs to be, right, coaxed into the appropriate form through an act of will, but it's still like you're not creating something fundamentally new. It's just being repurposed and reorganized to a specific or purposeful form, right, or purposeful function. So also related to primordial cosmic egg. So the egg is considered a place of chaos, right? So there's like before something hatches from the egg, there's just amorphous material, genetic material kind of floating around in there, right? So that's the chaotic state, the amorphous state. And it comes together in such a way to have a specific form. So then like there's an actual creature at some point in the egg that can crack open the egg and reveal itself. And so from that, there's also this idea of from chaos being an essential duality created from the chaos, or a cracking of the egg. So the cracking and the duality from a state of chaos is an important motif as well. Carl Jung says, in alchemy, the egg stands for chaos, for the chaos apprehended by the alchemist, the prima materia containing the captive world soul. Out of the egg will rise the eagle or the phoenix, the liberated soul. So there's like an egg, and that egg before it hatches is representing chaos, and then out of that prima materia comes, the phoenix, the created thing. Here we have the scout ship command key, and we've talked about this before as relating to the Axis Mundi as a sacred item, sacred center. All of those things are still true, but now we're emphasizing the fact that it is creation from chaos. Here's chaos, right? This is the amorphous sea of potential and generation, and then we have the kind of pillar-like image that is representing structure, is representing like, okay, I don't know what this is. Like it's hard to make sense of this, but I can make sense of this, right? So whenever you have that type of situation, we're talking about creation, right? So we're going from a state of, and we'll talk about this later as well, is creation can also be thought of as a state of non-knowing to a state of knowing, to a state of consciousness, to conscious awareness. That is a creative act, but that's more of a psychological interpretation, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just note that we're going from this place of like really noise. Basically noise is chaos, right? This is noisy, what is going on here, I can't make sense of this, to structure and form. So this is creation from a primordial chaos. The material itself is being reorganized into a state of clarity or relative clarity. It's like relative to that's more clear. I was like, okay, there, I kind of sense that's an S. I know that's a Superman symbol. As an audience member, I'm like, okay, I see. I get a sense of what's happening here, right? And here it's like, oh my God, there's a sea of chaos. What is going on? Somebody please help me. And then, oh, all right, that feels good. Creation. And so this would be order or cosmos, I would say, right? So this is where the order and the cosmos comes in. Of course, cosmos relating as well to cosmetic, making something beautiful, right? Making something orderly in a way that's appealing and nice to look at. There you go. Cosmos, order, creation myth in the process of putting on makeup, even. Okay, so another cool example I think is how so in BVS there's the part where there's like the gunman pointing the gun at the Waynes, but it doesn't just show the gun emerges, right? So emerging, the gun is being born in a similar manner as the command key is like kind of being generated from this amorphous fluid. Same thing, but the amorphous fluid, in a very cool way, in a very cool fashion, I believe, is out of focus, right? Something out of focus is like, what is that? We're in the chaos. We're in the primitive material. We're in the chaotic sea, the amorphous fluid, right? What's going on here? What's going on here? Oh, it's a gun pointed directly at my face. Dang it. I'll let this siren pass by. Oh, those sirens, those beautiful sirens. Not beautiful, of course, in this case, because it usually means there's a problem. But you know what I mean. Okay, so again, the gun doesn't just, they don't just show the gun. The gun is participating in a grand cosmic, narrative here, just by emerging from a sea of chaos, chaotic potential, and then suddenly, oh, I see what that is. So again, well, I'll talk about this later. I don't want to get ahead of myself again. Okay, and another example that maybe people haven't really thought of, kind of, I talked about the "Let there be light" moment that occurs a little bit later, but in the very beginning of the movie, you could say the "Let there be light" moment, it might be the projection of Stephen Link. But once the movie begins, it's like the signs, right? The studios and all of those things. It's like those can undergo a creation myth type structure where you're coming from a place of obscurity, confusion, ambiguity. What is that? Prima materia, chaos, right? This is chaos. Like what is this? What am I looking at? What am I looking at? Oh wait, something is forming. Something is forming. Oh, okay, it's the Time Warner Company image. That is, that process of growth from a place of chaos to a place of order and structure, and like, okay, now I see what's going on, and you get that visceral feeling. Oh, okay, right. So again, I'll talk about this other thing later. I keep wanting to talk about it now, but and the other sign. So this is in Man of Steel. So it kind of is like, okay, what next? What's happening now? And by the way, the Warner Company logo disappears. So it's like when it disappears, it goes through the disappearing act. It's going back into the void, right? It's going back into like, okay, where everything comes out of. It just goes back there to make way for something else. So we have this other thing where it's now starting a new process of like, oh my God, wait, what is this? Huh? Oh, wait, something is forming. Oh, okay, it's a legendary logo. I got you. Okay. So we got from a place of chaos, confusion, strangeness, can't quite pinpoint what it is, to transition to, you could say, a holy order, right? So it's like something holy is being bestowed upon us that we can now experience and have that jubilee of like, oh wow, now I see. We haven't even this movie hasn't started yet. We're already getting into but yeah, so that's cool. It's everywhere, right? Like you really got to understand that. Okay. So again, we have another example of primordial chaos or prima materia. So chaos can also be like a body that's decomposed, right? So or just a dead body, right? So in this case, Zod's dead body is used as the prima materia, as the chaos, and actually being put into the sea, into the water, the chaotic waters, to be reborn anew, transformed, created into something else. So we have Zod, who is reborn, right? And the rebirth process is naturally a creation process, but now we're putting it in more general terms, creation of something, right? So each thing we're talking about, you can really, you can interrelate them, you can transpose them, you can permutate them, and they're all the same thing, just kind of seen in different ways. So creation, rebirth, axis mundi, transitions, sacred centers, make your choice. So now we're talking about chaos and cosmos, creation myths. So in this case, yeah, this is just the dead body being transformed, and the blood here, I should mention. There's this process of creation, which we're not getting into the very specific, nitty-gritty processes. That'll be for later as well. Is there's, when you fertilize the land. So this is like farming farming and things like that, that's a naturally, you're creating something, you're creating from the earth, but you have to plant seeds, you have to water it, you have to do all these things. And so naturally in the creation process, you have like this watering, in this case, blood being used as a tool to fertilize and to give life, to renewed life, to Zod's dead body, right? And so all of these other things take place, but you can think of this as being a farmer, growing plants, watering something. Well, when you're growing plants, isn't that an act of creation as well? Yes, of course. So, all of that's being understood as these, as these stories kind of unfold, is like everything's can actually be put in the context of creation myth, and that is a very foundational context to put in it, by the way, of course, because remember, what is the most interesting thing possible? Okay, maybe there's something else, but what is the most interesting thing you can imagine? Creation of everything. What is also the most interesting, like they're equally interesting, is creation of yourself, right? Who you are, knowledge of yourself, is knowledge of your origin, is knowledge about your creation. And so there's really two things that are the most interesting thing, which is like everything and you. Okay. Creation of the cosmic order at large, the outer, the macrocosm, and the microcosm. That's the other equally important thing, but it's all, you and the universe. Yes. So there's nothing more interesting, and within all of that you get all these other concepts like love and beauty and truth and these other entities that we have to deal with, because they kind of serve as the juxtaposer to your goodness. There's like these evil, insidious creatures that are just okay. I guess they're in a dualistic sense. They're always going to be part of that process. We got to deal with it. You just brush them off. They're like agents and stuff. But what are you going to do? All right. So we also have very much like Zod being taken to the Genesis chamber. After all, it's called the Genesis chamber. That's creation. We have Superman's body being taken to be renewed, right? To be with renewed life. And so again, we have the sacred tree, the sacred center, where that occurs. All of these like lines, these electricity lines. I'm thinking anything branching really kind of has that sacred tree structure. Like this is for sure. And this is connecting the below, right? It kind of makes this. It kind of comes to a point here, and then it kind of expands back outward. It's very much below and above connection between the above world, below world, and through that connection, transitions and creation can occur. But I also want to note, again, we're starting from the prima materia is being put in the water. His body itself is the material that is being, with the water, with the kind of waters of the womb, you could also say. So the dead body is going back into the womb to be reborn, to be renewed, but all of that is prima materia. And also we note that just in passing that, the dead body, the horizontal, is naturally related to being dead, and the vertical, right? So there's a very small Superman, very tiny Superman figure here, but definitely vertical, and maybe emphasized further with these kind of vertical buildings, and the vertical represents the living, right? So the world of the living and the world of the dead, and you might think, if we put those two together, well, that's the cross. Well, certainly. So the cross can kind of represent the, kind of a tree itself, a tree of life, a pillar that somehow unites or connects, the idea of the below and the above, the underworld and the above world, the living and the dead. And of course, Jesus resurrecting and all of that shows that there was that, that idea that, passing between worlds of death and life. Okay, so yeah, this one is I just kind of spotted this one. I was like, oh, that's for sure that picture that I've seen before. The Ancient of Days by William Blake, the image on the left. You can see, if you look closely, the Flash, who is coming from the above. Remember, this is the above. This is like, so by the way, on the left, it's like that's God, the architect, constructing the world. That's creation myth. Yes, it's reflecting that same idea of something is being constructed, something being created. In this case, they're reconstructing Superman's body from a place of death to a place of rebirth and renewal and life, ascending the axis mundi. That's why he's up in the sky later. But here we have this kind of like image where we see the Ancient of Days, the compass, right? Where that's used to in the construction process, right? You want to make sure your distances and angles are right. But the point is coming from above as well, right? It has that motif. So something coming from above, using just being the architect of the world, reaching down to, generate, life, creation, rebirth, renewal, growth along the axis mundi. As they talk about also in the movie, how fire can turn a house into smoke, but the mother box can turn smoke back into a house. So that's the mother box is being used to create. So fire turning a house into smoke is the destruction. Going the other way is creation, right? It's just a time reversal. That's pretty, like creation is one direction, destruction is the other direction, but they're both kind of similar to each other. It's just they're really just a time reversal symmetry that kind of relates the two. So it's pretty cool, like in this case, we're going along the creation aspect where there's going to be growth, and he's going to explode out of the whale, the belly of the whale, through the sperm blowhole and every sperm whale, through the blowhole, and it's just like, oh wow, I'm reborn. Yes, because remember the womb of the belly of the whale is like the womb of creation, as so the scout ship, as so the Genesis chamber, right? It's all creation, my friends. Okay. So in this one, again, similar idea. We have like a dead body sort of married with the mother box, and those serving as the prima materia, the material that is, whose function it is to come together to create new life. So again, this is just another example of creation from a primordial chaos, or some original material that's being kind of like brought together. And again, we have like the body in this case kind of being the axis mundi with the arms out and things like that, and the branchings of the trees and whatnot. So that's all very similar to the other case, right? There's the branching of the tree. There's the sacred thing above, and he is basically looking up, and he's coming back to life, right? So in this one we have, I would say, primordial chaos, which again I'll talk about in the next video, as being more related to the psychological as well, is creation from. So in this case, in this situation, information is being extracted from his mind. He's trying to keep buried, and so using that language, extracting, trying to keep buried, the unconscious and the earth and all of that has been related. We've talked about that, and so that there's like a digging. This thing is digging out of his mind, out of the primordial material, to reform what's buried in his mind into an image of creation. We've talked about this before, is the axis mundi. We have the sacred center, the peak of the sacred center, and we have the concentric circles around that. This is kind of like very Lingam Yanni-esque, kind of holy temple vibes, right? But there's a center. This is a creation. It's being generated from his mind, but in a distinct fashion from what Victor was doing. Was by will. He just decided to create Superman image on the mother box. In this case, it's actually being extracted, and so that case, I would say it's like something being buried is being extracted, or it's being organized to generate an image from this kind of buried state. I would classify that as, primordial chaos or prima materia of the mind. So the mind in the state of ignorance and things being kept buried in the unconscious, that is so too related to the sea of potential. Like there's an infinite sea of information and knowledge, but it's kept in a state of ignorance if we keep it suppressed in our unconscious. We'll talk about more of that in the next chapter. All right. Again, primordial chaos or prima materia, in this case, Steppenwolf, to communicate with, dark side and Desaad, uses this sacred stone metallic material. I guess it's not stone, but it's metallic, right? And so he uses this sacred slab, there you go, as a way to, remember, situated in the center, in the axis mundi, in the sacred center, whereby communication with other people from other realms can occur. But also we see how that communicating information and transferring information is also, where creation occurs, right? So, the prima materia is being reformed, right? That's the key thing about prima materia. It's that it's something being reformed, or primordial chaos is being and from that, it's like, okay, that once we put it in this form, now it becomes this thing. So that's different from ex nihilo, where it's just like, poof, it's there. This is like, oh, there's something already there, and kind of purposing and reshuffling things around leads to a message from dark side, right? So all of the properties of the axis mundi, such as communication of information and energy source and energy flow and energy transformations along the axis mundi, those are also undergoing a sort of creation myth in that process of communication. So it's like communicating something is also something being created. And so there's this kind of thing where it's like everything is a creation myth, right? So it's like, for instance, if you can think about it, like if you send a prayer, if you say a prayer, you're kind of trying to transfer something to the kind of a sacred or heavenly realm. When we do, a message is sent. That message you can think of as a living thing. That message you can think of as a living thing that undergoes a rebirth from one realm to another realm. So even just communicating is creation once you realize that the words we speak are living. Everything is living. Something communicated like a prayer, or an object being transferred, or something like this. Also, like maybe you've seen Star Trek and their teleportation devices. All of those are the axis mundi as well. And once you transfer from one realm to another, you've been reborn into another place. You've been created into another place. You're undergoing creation myth. Whenever you're transferring location, whenever you're communicating information, that information is being transferred in location. So movement along the axis mundi is by nature constitutes a creation myth process. And this here you can see, of course, the metallic slab kind of doing that. He's actually communicating, and it's being, because it reforms. So the creation and the communication is only possible because dark side has been created here, right? So there's they're very tightly connected, all of these things. Cracking the cosmic egg. So this is maybe a little harder to see, but the language she gives here, talking about the events up here, she says it was like the sky cracked open. So that language is used specifically to allude to this idea of cracking the egg, cracking the cosmic egg. So the egg of creation, right? Naturally, an egg is related to creation myths as well, because something is born from it, right? So you have eggs, and that's like an inner womb, an inner space, and then it's cracked open to then allow, the reborn thing, or the born thing, whatever it is. But so when she uses that language, that's referring to this moment where the missile and the drone explodes. And so these are moments of cracking the cosmic egg, and in this case, different things are created. So you could say that the rocket's created from you can say the rocket's reborn from the drone. You could say Superman his presence is created in this process, and Superman actually drops down, right? So he's kind of reborn. So there's just all these births and creations occurring at any given scene. And in this case, it's alluding to just the sky cracking open, as she describes, is alluding to this idea that in the act of creation, you can crack open the cosmic egg, right? And so we have other moments of the egg motif, like here he is shown with 2 eggs, and then he looks up, and then the created thing that gets his attention is effectively her. So, going from a state of mundane activity of just cooking eggs to, oh, actually something serious is going on, I should pay attention to this, right? So he has ascended along an axis mundi, basically, in terms of his mental state and his attention, okay? We can also go back to the kryptonite, right? So he actually cracks open the kryptonite, and that's a cracking of the cosmic egg as well. So it's related to the Earth Diver, and it's a cracking of the cosmic egg. So remember, these are interrelated. They're not just like mutually exclusive. Here, so we even have that type of, that grass or whatever that, you put eggs into. We have the cracking open of the crate. So there's this idea of like something being cracked open, and the thing that is created is some image or something that relates to the thing being sought after, basically. We also have here, Jor-El's like, strike that panel. He breaks it open. That's a cracking open of some shell-like thing. So it's an egg, and the sun can sort of be regarded as the yolk of that egg that has been cracked. All right, so here we have a sequence of Superman and Man of Steel saving Lois. So Lois is in this little kind of container, kind of a shell-like object as well. He has to break it open to save her, right? So it gets shattered, and he pulls her out of it, right? He pulls her out of it and saves her from that. But again, he had to crack open this shell-like thing to extract Lois, who is the reborn thing, right? So she's kind of stuck in this place, and he unsticks her by pulling her out and cracking the cosmic egg, basically, right? So she's reborn. She's reborn. And it's also just kind of funny that, like, this is the image he sees. He sees, like, sweet Lois just like there, scared out of her mind, and then he makes this face. He's like, oh, hi, Lois. But yeah, he's just trying to save her, of course, right? And again, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, there's this motif of cracking the cosmic egg. We have, remember, that V shape of going from singularity to duality. So there's like a two-ness here. There's like two things. And, that shape is very important. Right? So that... Remember, they actually talk about the mother box being cracked open. It's like when the crack first appeared, and so on. So that image is a cracking, and that's a creating, right? So in the cracking, there is a creating, and the creating, to go from a state of unity is like a state of chaos, where everything is just kind of like all the same, and there's no discrepancy between anything. There's no definition of anything. Once you crack into a state of duality, you've begun the act of creation, right? So it's like this kind of separation, again, like the world parent separation. There's a separation being associated with this process of cracking, or the act of creation. So this is obviously from the movie Alien, with the movie poster being one of the images of the creation myths, and here it's the creation via a cracking of the cosmic egg. But we look at the specific structure of the V that is created, that designates a sense of coming from a singular point, spreading out to a tree of duality, let's say, right? So it's like, so they kind of represent a cosmic egg, and their ability to create and destroy actually is like one of the main things of this story. So in here, in BVS, Bruce is trying to crack Luthor's drive, right? So that, again, that same language, right? When the sky cracked open, we got the cracking open of the kryptonite. We got the cracking of Luther's drive. All of these things allude to the cracking of the cosmic egg, which alludes to the process of creation moving from a state of singularity to duality. Okay, so the duality here is the index finger juxtaposed to the thumb, which is shorter. Okay, and it has that motif, that V motif, which kind of suggests something is being created, and we can also, get a sense of we're at the kind of early stages because they're like wires. So whenever I see wires, I think like tree roots and things like that. I always think like, okay, we're like deep in the earth for some reason. So it's like we're in the earth, even a seed, right? So cracking cosmic egg is a thing that's often cracked in the creation myths from chaos, but the seed also can crack, and it cracks open when it starts to spread out into the above and the below. So it's like the duality that is contained within the potential of a single seed, the monad, cracks open, and then from that creates duality. So it's like, oh wow, so there's like even a seed has the same ideas as the cracking of the cosmic egg, as creation myth, and so on. In each case, though, Man of Steel, BVS, Zack Snyder's Justice League, basically the whole ending climactic sequence is a reverting back into destruction or chaos. But through that process, right, something has been created. And so in this case, Superman is born. But there is also creation of new world pillars, new world parents. So it's like, you can even say this is like a world parent, where it's like the earlier world parents, Lois and Superman, are now, being re-expressed as Batman and Wonder Woman. And they stand as the newly created pillars resulting from this cataclysmic and tragic destruction. And so the destruction, that's a creation from chaos. All of this stuff was chaos. So everything's decimated, everything's cleared away. You can even think of it as a reconsecration. To start anew, you have to clear the area, right? So to start something anew, you have to kind of clear the space. So this clearing of the space is something you might do if you're trying to build something, build a temple, for instance. You clear the area so there is space to create. So here in Zack Snyder's Justice League, we have, literally the world is just gonna like explode. Basically, it's exploded because of the mother boxes, and all towards the end of this movie, the heroes are basically taking out the trash. Right? They're clearing that space. They're removing the filth from the land. That is the precursor to the act of creation. You clear the area, get rid of the trash, throw everything away that's nasty and bad and sick, so that in the last case we have the Justice League itself is created. And so in Man of Steel, Superman is created. In Batman v Superman, Batman and Wonder Woman take a stand in the good to take the mantle of the heroic mentality. And then finally in Zack Snyder's Justice League, we have the creation of the Justice League, right? So it's like, but all of that is through this chaotic process, that's what's serving as the prima materia so that they can form a strong bond together, right? So they form a strong unity.